Rhaegar Targaryen tasted copper on his tongue as the wind shifted across the Trident, carrying with it the iron-heavy scent of blood and churned earth. His breaking line of spearmen pressed forward in perfect, practiced cadence, the silver and black banners of House Targaryen whipping behind them like serpents in a storm. Beneath the visor of the ruby-studded helm, sweat mingled with the drizzle from the sullen gray sky, tracing a bittersweet path along his cheek. He felt every flutter of his war steed's ribcage, every vibration of hoof against riverbank, as though the destrier's heart now beat in place of his own. Robert Baratheon was somewhere ahead, roaring like a summer tempest. Yet the gods had chosen this hour, and Rhaegar carried prophecy on his shoulders as surely as he bore the weight of plate and silk. He lifted his sword, grains of dull sunlight glancing off the Valyrian steel to dance across the rippling surface of the ford. The Martell spearman to his left pivoted with practiced grace, slotting into the shield wall. The Dornish prince had rehearsed with them in the grueling weeks since King's Landing. To his right, the gilded helms of Lord John Connington's Stormlanders shone brighter than the pale dawn, their painted shields depicting flaming hearts and stags' heads defaced by dragon claws. Rhaegar allowed himself a single breath, a fleeting spark of calm, before urging his mount into the swirling shallows that lapped at the Trident's bank. The first clash came like thunder. Spear points rattled against oaken shields, shafts splintering, men crying out wordless prayers as steel bit through ring and flesh in the same heartbeat. The world narrowed to crimson splashes and the white hiss of breath in his helm. He saw Robert then, huge, unstoppable. A dark bear of a man astride a massive war horse, its barding painted gold. The rebel lord's warhammer swung in a brutal arc, scattering two of Connington's men like dolls struck from a child's careless hand. Lightning cracked above, raw and jagged, illuminating Robert's face. The wild joy of battle, sweat streaking through river mud, eyes burning blue as a storm-lit sea. Rhaegar guided his horse forward with a squeeze of his knees, weaving between dying men and fallen banners that floated like grotesque lilies on the reddening water. Robert saw him. In that instant, the rebel's grin widened, as though he had been waiting all morning for this single moment. Their clash rang across the ford like a bell summoning the dead. Hammer met sword, steel shrieked and sparked, and an echo rolled from bank to bank. The world became the rhythmic thud of hooves, the crash of metal, the pounding in his chest that marked each heartbeat with the possibility of annihilation. Robert's hammer whistled past his helm, close enough for Rhaegar to feel the hot breath of displaced air on his ear. He answered with a diagonal cut that nicked the antlered helm's brow, shaving away iron and leaving a sliver of flesh exposed beneath. Another parry, another sound of ringing doom, and Robert reeled back half a length. In that hesitation lay the fate of kingdoms. Rhaegar struck again, a tight upward slash that forced the hammer aside, opening Robert's guard for a heartbeat. A heartbeat was enough. He pivoted in the saddle, sliding the blade under Robert's upraised arm and into the gap at the gorget, twisting as he pulled away. Heat blossomed across his gauntlet. The sword came free, slick and black-red. Robert's roar faltered, caught somewhere between rage, shock, and disbelief. Blood spilled down the stag lord's breastplate in thick sheets, washing the stylized crowned stag in a tide of scarlet. For a moment Robert swayed, the hammer slipping from his grasp into the shallows with a splash that sounded strangely small amidst the carnage. Then he toppled, half falling, half dragged by the reins as his mount reared in confusion. Men screamed the name Baratheon as they saw their liege tumble, and the shape of the battle bent like iron in the forge. Some surged toward their fallen lord. Others faltered, swords dropping, eyes wide with the sudden terror of a legend undone. Lightning cracked again, and Rhaegar was there, boots splashing as he dismounted, one gauntleted hand clamped to Robert's throat, pinning him in the murky water while torn foam swirled around them like ghosts. Their eyes locked. Robert tried to form a word. Nend? Lyanna? But blood flooded his mouth in a violent cough, and whatever plea he had died upon a bubbling tide. Rhaegar's voice rested on the river like a benediction. Rest, Storm Lord. The song changes now. He felt Robert's pulse flutter weakly beneath his grip, then fade like a guttering candle. When he rose, the water at his knees was crimson, the hammer sinking slowly into the mud like an offering to forgotten gods. Beyond, the rebel host broke. Men threw down arms and fled toward the line of shallow trees. Others fell to their knees, surrendering without words. Thunder rolled, distant and weary, as if the sky itself exhaled. Eddard Stark saw the stag banners falter from atop the far bank where his column waited to charge. One heartbeat they had been poised, a silver wolf among black stags. The next, confusion rippled like winter wind across a frozen field. Ned's hand tightened on Ice's hilt, ancient, heavy, a trust passed from father to son. Beside him, Hullen shouted something lost to wind in distance, pointing with his spear toward the place where Robert's gold-painted helm bobbed in the murk, half submerged. A hollow cold spread through Ned's limbs. Robert had been his friend, his brother of another name since boyhood in the Eyrie. He had believed, as surely as sunrise, that the Storm Lord could not be defeated. Every dream of justice he carried for Lyanna, every pledge to unseat a mad king, had hinged upon Robert's strength, Robert's unbreakable will. But prophecy, Ned realized with dull horror, favored the Dragon Prince this day. A wave of spearmen bearing the three-headed dragon surged up the bank toward him, led by Jon Connington, crimson hair plastered wetly against his helm's rim. Around Ned, the Northmen looked to him in silence. Their banners, gray direwolves snarling beneath skies of hailing flurries, seemed suddenly pale beside the dragon's black and red. Across the ford, Rhaegar had remounted. The prince sheathed his sword with a flourish both graceful and weary, turning his amethyst eyes across the river until they settled on Ned. Recognition flickered like dawnfire between them, but no triumph. Ned raised his sword in silent salute, some oath without words, and turned to his bannerman. "Hold," he called above the wind. "Stand your ground." The command felt strange upon his lips. He wished only to ride across the river, find Robert's body, and kneel beside it until grief might numb the world. Yet he was now the spear point of rebellion, whether he willed it or no. The moment stretched taut, as though the battlefield itself drew breath. Then Rhaegar lifted a gloved hand. A silver horn sounded from behind his line, high and clear. It was not a call to attack. Rather, it cut through screams and thunder like a prayer for stillness. The spearmen advancing upon Ned slowed, then stopped. Shields held steady, but spears dipping in uncertain arcs. Another horn answered, the martell note. Ned thought, recognizing the desert flourish embedded in its cadence. Silence seeped across the Trident as men who had slaughtered one another a heartbeat earlier found themselves frozen beneath a broken sky, held by the will of the Dragon Prince. Rhaegar spoke, voice carrying over water with the resonance of command. "Lords of the North, the Vale, and the Riverlands, lay down your arms. Robert Baratheon is dead, slain in single combat. The blood price is paid." He paused, surveying the field where bodies lay thick as reeds. "Enough men have died upon this day. Yield, and I swear by my blood, and by the stars above Valyria, that you shall have amnesty. Houses loyal to the false rebellion may yet find honor in the realm reborn." Nemderol. Murmurs rustled through Ned's ranks, voices thick with fear, with doubt, with exhaustion. He tasted bile. Honor warred against mourning in his chest, each breath a needle through his ribs. Across the field he saw Thoros of Myr kneeling in mud, priest's hair plastered red by both dye and gore as he murmured litanies over Robert's still form. The rebellion, it seemed, had died with its crowned stag. Yet Ned Stark had not yielded. He sheathed ice slowly and slid from his saddle. Boots found slick grass at the edge of the ford. Every step felt leaden as he walked down the bank, splashes muffled by the hush of thousands watching. Connington's spearmen parted to let him pass. Some bowed their helms in respect for a foe who had fought fiercely. Ned waded knee-deep, water-numbing, until Robert lay before him. Thoros withdrew as Ned knelt, cradling the broad shoulders that had once flung axes in jest at summer boys, splashing in eerie pools. Robert's eyes, blue as the far north sky, stared sightless through gathering mist. "I fear I failed you, old friend," Ned whispered. Lightning flickered weakly, a last sigh of storm. He brushed damp curls from Robert's brow, recalling nights of shared laughter, of stolen wine, of youthful boasts about wives not yet won. The memory of Lyanna stabbed like frost. But when Ned looked up, he met the amethyst gaze of the man who had forsworn crown and father alike to steal Lyanna from her betrothal. Beneath robes soaked dark at the hem, Rhaegar's throat moved once. "Lord Eddard," he said softly, yet the entire battlefield seemed to hear it. "I grieve for your loss. Robert was a mighty foe and a valiant soul. His name will be sung in the halls of Valyria and Winterfell alike." "Bow. Spare me songs," Ned answered, voice cold as the river's heart. "Lyanna lies still captive, if she lives at all. My sister's honor has been torn for this song you claim." He rose, water streaming from his mail. "End this, Prince. Give her back to me. Only then might peace find purchase in the north." For a breath, Rhaegar's composure cracked. In his eyes, Ned glimpsed a man haunted by prophecy and burdened by choices that even victory could not redeem. "She is at the Tower of Joy," the prince said at last, the words trembling like a harp's broken string. "Safe, or so I believed. I go to her now. Come with me, Stark, as brother in arms rather than as enemy. Stand witness to the realm I intend to forge, from the ashes of Aerys' madness, from this blood-soaked river." Thunder growled distant now, carrying the storm's retreat into the hills. Ned looked upon the slain, upon his weary men, upon the eyes of thousands waiting for a word to decide their fate. The weight of choice settled upon him like cold iron. Justice for Lyanna warred with duty to his men, to the realm, to the ghosts that would haunt him, should more blood spill upon deaf earth. Honor, he thought, was a blade with two edges, and no safe handle. "I will come," Ned said, voice hoarse. "But know this, if harm has touched her, the North will remember." Rhaegar inclined his helm in solemn acceptance. "May the gods bear witness." He turned then, signaling attendants to lift Robert's body with care onto a makeshift bier. Banners dipped in mourning. Rain began anew, gentler now, washing blood from steel and skin alike. Men breathed again, as if released from a binding spell. Atop the Red Keep, Queen Rhaella tasted smoke on the wind. King Aerys paced before the Iron Throne, fingers twitching in that fevered dance between fear and fury. Whispers had reached the capital on raven's wings. Word of the rebel host crushed at the Trident, of Robert slain by the prince's blade. Yet victory's perfume soured upon Aerys' tongue. Varys stood beside a pillar in shadow, the folds of his lavender silk whispering secrets the air alone could hear. The king's eyes, rimmed red and wild, darted from pillar to pillar as though traitors lurked within the stone itself. "They will come," Aerys muttered, nails scratching at the fresh scabs on his palms. "Even dragons' victory births, vipers hungry for the throne. I must have fire. I must have all the wildfire, as deep as the dragon pit's bones." Rhaella reached for him, gentle, measured, the way one soothed a mad hound. "Beloved, Rhaegar will be here soon. Our son is victorious. Let the realm see its rightful king rejoicing, not trembling." "Rhaegar?" Aerys laughed, a sharp, glassy sound. "He will stand before me, proud, beloved by lords who once cried for Robert. Then he will kneel." "Oh, he will kneel!" Spittle flew. "And if he dares deny me, if he dares raise song above his own sire, king or dragon, my command is flame." Varys' smooth voice poured from the gloom. "Your grace, the city yet teeters between hope and dread. Wildfire beneath the septs will do little to soothe them. My city, my fire." Aerys whirled, robed swirling like a dark flame. "Traitors crawl beneath every cobblestone. Only fire is faithful. Fire obeys." Rhaella's gaze slipped to the spider. In those black eyes he read calculation, pity, and a dreadful certainty. If Rhaegar delayed, if the prince did not seize the capital swiftly, a dragon's victory might end in dragonfire consuming children in their beds. Far across the stormlands, dawn broke pale over the Tower of Joy. Lyanna Stark pressed a hand to the stone sill, breath catching at the horizon's blush. She had grown thin in the long months since Dorne. Yet defiance burned in her gray eyes. Her hand strayed to her belly's gentle swell, half hidden beneath gowns once rich, now worn. Each morning, she measured the quiet flutter of life within, seeking in its tiny heartbeat proof that the world beyond these walls still turned. The King's Guard posted below, Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, and Sir Oswell Went stood silent as statues, their white cloaks stirring in the fitful breeze. Lyanna's thoughts drifted northward, to Winterfell's snow-sweet air, to her brother's laughter, to the canopy of old oaks where she had raced ponies as wild as her heart. She imagined Ned's stern but gentle eyes, Benjen's wolfish grin, her father's solemn pride. Each memory ached like frostbite across bone, yet she clung to them as armor against the loneliness. Somewhere she knew Robert fought to free her, Robert the boisterous, Robert the unstoppable. But in the quiet pre-dawn she wondered if battle's roar might have claimed him already, if her rescue lay drowned in some river's bloody waters. A sudden flutter of wings drew her gaze skyward. A raven circled once, black as onyx against the pearled sky, then arrowed toward the tower. Lyanna felt her pulse quicken. Messages came rarely, each scroll carried by the King's Guard, and read beyond her hearing. This raven bore ribbons of red and black about its leg, the prince's colors. She pressed a hand to her heart, unsure whether to pray for hope or steel herself for doom. On the river road, Rhaegar rode with Ned Stark at his side, banners streaming behind in a confluence of dragon and direwolf. The journey passed in tense quiet, each mile haunted by the specter of choice. At every village men came forth, some cheering, others wary, still others kneeling in surrender. Rhaegar accepted their homage with measured grace, promising restitution, promising a new dawn after the madness of Aerys. Yet in campfires that dotted the march path, rumor whispered that the king planned to burn King's Landing before his son could claim it. Rhaegar said little, but each night he unrolled parchment and scrawled urgent orders for Lord Hightower to ready the citadel, for Stephen Darry to secure the city gates, for the Alchemists' Guild to lock their wildfire vaults. Ned kept silent counsel, though unease gnawed him. The prince spoke of amnesty and prophecy, of a world united under the dragon's wings, yet he had not said what fate awaited Robert's supporters, nor addressed whispers that the royal court seethed with fear of purge. Most of all, Ned's heart pounded with thoughts of Lyanna, captive yet cherished. Rhaegar insisted. Safe, the prince vowed. But bargains struck upon battlefields often died upon thrones. On the 5th night of their march, as campfires crackled under a moonless sky, Ned found Rhaegar alone before a map, spread upon a makeshift table of crates. The prince traced a path from King's Landing to the Dornish marches, lips moving in silent calculation. "You planned 2 wars at once," Ned said quietly. Rhaegar looked up, shadows carving hollows beneath his high cheekbones. "I plan salvation. My father will not yield the throne peacefully, and the realm will not rest while questions linger about my intent with your sister. I must secure both, swiftly, decisively." "Prophecy?" Ned asked, unable to keep scorn from the word. For the first time, Rhaegar's composure faltered fully. He sank onto a stool, rubbing gloved fingers over his eyes. "I was raised beneath its weight. My sire sought it in every whisper of flame, every scream of burning man. I sought it in books, in song, in the stars. Yet prophecy is a dagger with no hilt. I thought Lyanna, the winter rose, promised within the glass candle's glow." His voice cracked. Glistening grief flashed. "Raw and human. I thought love could shape destiny without breaking lives. I was wrong." Silence stretched, filled only by the distant clop of patrol hoofbeats. Ned felt his anger cool, replaced by weary understanding. "Then mend what you have broken," he said. "Free her. Let her choose her path. Winterfell will not stand in the way of peace if peace preserves her honor." "Da." Rhaegar met his gaze. "When this march ends, we ride to the tower together. On that, I give you my word." And so the river road carried them onward, toward a city poised above a tinderbox, toward a tower where a storm-born child quickened within a wolf's womb. toward a throne forged of swords and sins. Behind them the Trident settled into uneasy calm. But the song was far from ended. It would unspool across castles and deserts, across hearts both noble and base, each note plucked upon the fragile string of fate. Balerion's great bronze bells pealed dusk across King's Landing as the first outriders announced the Dragon Prince's imminent arrival. Within the Red Keep, Grand Maester Pacelle dabbed scented oil onto trembling hands before setting quill to parchment, drafting salutations that might placate either father or son. In the corridors, servants whispered of barrels being rolled beneath sept and scriptorium, wildfire most said, while others murmured of grain for siege. On the street of silk, the highborn and the low-crowded windows, eager to witness which dragon would claim the sky. Aerys watched from the Tower of the Hand, fingers bleeding anew where he tore at scabs. He saw banners of red and black, yet beneath them men marched who once bore sigils that defied him. His crown felt too heavy, sliding as though to flee his brow. Flames, he thought, his breath hot with terror. Only the faithful flames will never betray. He closed his eyes and pictured the city aflame, green fire devouring trader and courtesan, lord and blacksmith alike, until memory of his own screams merged with their imagined howls. He smiled then, a lover's smile, and whispered to the empty air, "Burn them all." The tower rose from the red sand like a pale spear piercing dawn. Lyanna stood upon its roof, white cloak billowing, arms wrapped protectively around her swollen belly. Below, sunlight found the king's guards' polished helms and turned them to molten gold. She sensed the shift in the wind even before distant dust clouds appeared, riders approaching fast. Fear and hope warred in her breaths. If Rhaegar came victorious, what chains might remain? If Robert lay dead, what future awaited the child within her? She pressed a palm to the place where life stirred, and in that small thrum found courage to meet whatever dawn bore upon its wings. Farther south, Rhaegar felt the same wind, cool against sweat-damp hair, as he led his column from the winding water road onto the desert flats. The sun climbed, banners snapped, and destiny beckoned once more, demanding sacrifice for song. And in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, the realm held breath, balanced upon the edge of a dragon's sword, waiting to know whether fire would cleanse or consume. Oh, ha! The bells of King's Landing tolled beneath a bruised dawn, each peal rolling over slate-tiled roofs and crooked chimneys like the echo of distant thunder. Down in Flea Bottom, where night soil still steamed in the gutters and alley cats slunk from shattered wine casks, the small folk woke to strange stillness. The gold cloaks who had once swaggered with cudgels raised now stood 2 by 2 at every corner, their faces pale and their grips tight. Rumors scurried faster than rats. Prince Rhaegar advanced with a host half a league long, wolves of the north padding at his flanks, the red sun of Dorne unfurled beside the three-headed dragon. Yet the greater dread whispered behind shuttered doors, spoke not of armies but of wildfire, barrels stacked in cellar vaults, jars hidden beneath the septs. A mad kins promised to drown treason in green flame. Mothers pressed babes to their breasts and prayed the stranger would pass them by. Bakers kneaded bread while glancing at smoke-black chimneys, wondering whether today's fire might swallow hearth and home together. Over it all rang the bells, relentless, as though tolling for the city itself. Along the King's Road outside the Lion Gate, Rhaegar's vanguard drew rein beneath fluttering standards damp with morning mist. The prince rode at their head in armor still stained by Trident blood, rubies studding his breastplate like dying embers. At his right hand, Ned Stark kept his great cloak tight at the throat, the direwolf stitched upon it matted from river water. Eyes met only briefly between the two commanders, yet in that glance lay a pact more fragile than any parchment. The promise of peace, if peace could be wrested from the jaws of fire and grief. Behind them rode John Connington, crimson hair bound in a leather thong, and Lord Oswell, one of the King's Guard, white cloak torn where a spear had snagged it in the rout. Farther back trudged lines of weary soldiers, Dornish spears and Stormland knights who had bent the knee at the ford, their oaths remade beneath a sky scoured by lightning. Rhaegar's voice scarcely rose above the breeze. Yet every nearby man heard him. "We take the city, not sack it. Any man drawing blade against the innocent answers to me." He turned in the saddle to sweep his gaze across frank northern faces, olive-skinned Dornish veterans, mail-clad brazen stagmen, now bereft of their lord. Spread the word down every rank. King's Landing must see justice, not tyranny reborn. Now, a murmur of assent rippled outward. Ned's jaw tightened, recalling tales of Hammerhal in the Minnesota Rebellion, when victory had soured in the mouths of conquerors who burned what they could not hold. "They fear wildfire," he said quietly as they edged toward the massive gatehouse. "When common folk speak of dragons, they mean flames swallowing children, not songs of prophecy." "They will not burn," Rhaegar vowed. But he did not smile. Word from Varys had reached him in the night. His father would not yield. The alchemist's halls stirred like a nest of hornets. Sir Jaime Lannister, youngest of the Kingsguard, had been seen pacing outside the throne room, with hand upon sword pommel, unease ghosting his boyish features. In every letter the spider delivered, a single line had stood stark. "The king trusts no one, yet he trusts the flames." Before first light, Rhaegar had penned one final missive to Grand Maester Pycelle, commanding him to unseal the gates lest treason be answered by siege and starvation. Whether Pycelle still held enough courage or cowardice to obey weighed on the prince like an unseen chain. Thus he rode beneath ancient stone archways, uncertain if bolts would be drawn back or quarrels loosed. On the ramparts, the kettle drums of decision beat. Lord Stokeworth and Rosby, summoned by frantic ravens, looked upon the approaching host with faces drained of color. Siege meant famine. Surrender meant the ire of a dragon king long steeped in paranoia. Yet between fear of certain ruin and hope of measured mercy, hope won a shaky victory. At the hour of the third bell, chains rattled within dark tunnels, and the Lion Gate yawned open. A hush descended as the first column of Targaryen spearmen stepped onto cobblestones slick with morning dew. Inside the city walls, Rhaegar dismounted, his boots ringing upon the stones like a smith's hammer on steel. Ned Stark followed, ice still peace-bonded at his hip, though his gray eyes flicked to every alley mouth. Far off, the smell of roasted barley drifted from the street of flour, mingling with the copper tang of fear. Squat townsfolk watched from doorways clutching children. Some bowed their heads, others spat to ward off sorcery. Rhaegar removed his helm, letting pale hair fall damp across his brow. When he spoke, his voice carried down the narrow street, like a chapel hymn. "People of King's Landing, I come as your prince, not your conqueror. Sheathe your knives and you shall keep your homes." From somewhere up high, a child's voice cried, "Will there be bread?" A laugh, half sobbing, followed before a thin woman hushed him. Rhaegar lifted his gaze to the shuttered window. "Bread, and more. No dragon shall feast on the poor." He turned then, murmuring to Connington, who dispatched runners laden with coins from the royal treasury seized at Rosby's manse the previous day. Wagons of grain, long hidden by fearful granary lords, were ordered broken open for distribution. Word fanned through the slums like sparks on a dry thatch roof. Except this time, the sparks brought not flames but relief. The crowd's posture eased. Suspicious eyes gave way to cautious nods. Yet further up the hill, within the Red Keep's crimson sprawl, tension coiled tighter. Queen Rhaella greeted her son at Maegor's holdfast, eyes rimmed with fatigue, but shining. She bade servants lead him through a curtained passage toward the Tower of the Hand. "Your father waits," she whispered. "I begged him to receive you in the throne room with witness, but..." Her voice trembled. "He barricades himself with pyromancers. Beware, my child." Rhaegar clasped her slender hands. "Stay in your chambers. Keep visories close. Whatever you hear, do not leave until I send for you." He touched her cheek, then strode away. Ned Stark at heel, along with Sir Barristan Selmy and Lord Went. When they reached the marble foyer before the throne room doors, Jaime Lannister stepped from shadow, brows knit. "The king threatens to burn us all," he warned. "He will not listen." Pyromancers prowl the passages with torches lit. One spark, and he broke off, jaw clenching. I swore to guard him, yet I fear guarding the realm now means guarding it from him. Rhaegar laid a hand on the young knight's shoulder. Stand with me, Sir Jaime. Today your oath is tested. The lion hesitated, then nodded once, knuckles whitening upon sword hilt. 2 Kingsguard pushed the door wings open. The hall beyond lay drenched in green candlelight from tall fluted braziers of wildfire, whose sickly glow painted pillars with eerie shadows. Atop the iron throne perched King Aerys, silver beard matted against gaunt cheeks, eyes glittering like shards of broken bottle glass. Around him clustered half a score of alchemists in robes the color of verdigris, each clutching stoppered vials. Smoke of burning oils coiled toward the vaulted ceiling, redolent of rotten fruit and brimstone. "My son the usurper," Aerys shrieked, voice echoing off iron blades. "Come to seize crown kingdom like any traitor dog." Rhaegar bowed. "Deep enough to honor, not deep enough to submit entirely. I come to end bloodshed and rebuild what fear has broken. Father, the realm stands behind me. Lay down flame, embrace peace." Aerys laughed, a sound like nails raked across slate. "Peace? There is no peace but in ash. Varys says you slew Robert, I. Bold. Yet rebels crawl like maggots still." "Stark. Aaron Tully." He caught sight of Ned beyond Rhaegar's shoulder. "And here's the wolf itself. Bring me his head, and I shall dine upon victory." "Ben Chamter." Ned's hand drifted toward ice, but Rhaegar stepped sideways, blocking the king's view. His tone cooled. "Your grace, Lord Stark, is guest beneath my protection. If heads must fall, begin with mine. Spare him and the realm." Aerys' lips peeled back. "You speak of sparing?" He rose, robes whispering. Madness flickering across waxen face. "Grand Maester, deliver me the jars." 2 pyromancers advanced, holding blackened bronze casks stoppered with soft wax, each thrumming with volatile promise. "Behold the true king's justice," Aerys hissed. "With a word, I cleanse treason. Burn them all." Sir Jaime's blade sang free. Swift as summer lightning, in one flowing arc he severed the arm of the nearest pyromancer. Green fire blooming from shattered jar to spread across the marble floor in hungry tendrils. Barristan Selmy was a breath behind, batting the second vessel clear with his shield, so it shattered harmlessly against a stone stair, sputtering but contained. The alchemist shrieked. Aerys reeled, striking at Jaime's exposed helm with fingernails grown jagged. Jaime plunged his sword through the king's chest, mercy and betrayal forged into one lethal stroke. Blood bubbled crimson across the throne's blades. Aerys sagged, mouth slack, eyes vacant. A silence heavy with disbelief engulfed the hall. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Rhaegar drew a slow breath. He met Jaime's stricken gaze, saw the horror of oath-breaking writ there. "The realm will remember this as salvation, not treason," he said softly. "Stand fast, sir. Your honor is not lost." To Selmy he ordered, "Quench those flames before they spread. And find Grand Maester Pycelle. Tell him the king is dead, and his son shall sit the throne." Thou. Atop the iron throne, Rhaegar did not linger. Gouts of wildfire hissed where Barristan's cloak smothered them, leaving acrid smoke. Rhaegar turned to Ned Stark, eyes bleak. "It ends, but at a price higher than crowns." Ned answered with a steady nod. He too knew the stain of necessary sin. Hours later, ravens darkened the skies over the crownlands, bearing news that would splinter alliances and forge others anew. Aerys to Targaryen, the Mad King, was dead. Rhaegar ascended as Rhaegar IV, first of his name. In decrees penned before dusk, he proclaimed general amnesty, freed Stormland prisoners, restored lands to houses who bent the knee, and summoned a great council to Old Town 6 moons hence to reweave the broken sinews of Westeros. But first he would ride south with Lord Eddard Stark to the White Tower rising lonely above Dorne's red mountains. The march to the Tower of Joy carved through sun-bleached ravines where heat shivered off slate and scorpions scuttled beneath flat stones. Rhaegar's party was small by design. Ned Stark, Arthur Dayne, Oswell went, and Elia Martell's brother Prince Oberyn, whose amber eyes glimmered with unspoken questions. Connington remained in King's Landing to oversee the city garrison, while Barristan Selmy organized coronation rites. In the quiet desert evenings, they camped beneath sprawling skies, jeweled with strange southern constellations. Ned watched Rhaegar take to his silver harp each night, plucking soft minor chords that drifted over crackling campfires like lullabies for ghosts. The prince seldom spoke of prophecy now. Instead, he asked Ned of Winterfell Springs, of the taste of northern snowmelt on the tongue, of the scent of weirwoods in summer. Ned answered, voice rough, remembering home. On the 12th dawn, the Tower of Joy rose ahead, pale and narrow against a horizon the color of bleached bone. 7 white swords stood guard outside its iron gate, but only 2 bore living hands. Arthur Dayne and Oswell went. The others, their brothers, lay within, succumbing to fever weeks earlier. As they approached, Dayne knelt, offering dawn, his great white blade, as token of fealty to Rhaegar's new reign. The prince bade him rise. No sword need bend today, he said. Only hearts. Up the spiraling stairs they climbed, boots echoing. At the highest chamber's arched door, Rhaegar paused, hand trembling upon the latch. Ned stepped forward. Together, he murmured. They entered. Lyanna Stark lay upon a canopied bed, face pale yet serene, sweat-damp hair clinging to her brow. A basin of blood-stained water rested nearby. Shredded linen strips overflowed a wicker basket. Beside her sat a midwife, wide-eyed, fingers red to the wrist. The woman looked up as they entered. Your lady has borne a son, she whispered, voice trembling between fear and awe. He came quick as a thunderclap just before dawn. Rhaegar's breath stopped, chest hitching. He crossed to the bedside, knees folding beneath him. Lyanna's eyes fluttered open, gray as winter dawn. For a heartbeat she seemed confused. Then recognition warmed her expression even through exhaustion. Eddard. She rasped, reaching a tremulous hand toward her brother. Ned grasped it, tears stinging unbidden. You came. I promised, he choked. She turned to Rhaegar, a faint smile lifting cracked lips. And you kept me safe. Her gaze drifted to the bundled infant swaddled at her side. Our son. Rhaegar touched the child's downy head, awe flooding his face. The babe opened eyes of startling violet, gazing upon the world as though cataloging each passing shadow. Aegon, Rhaegar murmured. Aegon of House Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne. He looked to Ned, voice thick. And of House Stark through his mother, dragon and wolf. Then? Ned closed his eyes, the enormity of it pressing upon him like snowfall upon branches. A child half Targaryen, half Stark, birthright of ice and fire. Prophecy breathed anew. Yet with prophecy came peril. Robert's bannermen still roamed the countryside nursing grief and anger. If word spread that Lyanna had borne the Dragon Prince a son before wedding vows, knives would weave across every realm. Even now, ravens likely carried tales that Ned Stark traveled beside the Dragon King. How would the North greet news of Lyanna's fate? How would Catelyn look upon her husband's return with a babe born of another man's seed, even if by union rather than rape? Ned felt as though he balanced upon a bridge of glass. Every step faded to crack. Lyanna's fingers tightened around his. Promise me, Ned, she whispered. The words tore from her throat like wind through brittle leaves. Promise me he will live. Promise me the songs will not kill him. Tears slipped from Ned's lashes. I promise. He did not yet know how such a promise might be kept, only that he would spend every breath to honor it. Rhaegar lowered his forehead to hers. Silver hair mingling with sable. Rest, my love. No crown or prophecy shall weigh upon you now. Lyanna's eyes drifted shut, a final sigh escaping her lips asleep. For something deeper claimed her. The midwife pressed cloths to staunch new bleeding. Outside the open window, desert wind hissed mournfully. Night gathered early beyond those walls. Around a small fire in the courtyard, Ned Stark and Prince Oberyn shared wary counsel, while Rhaegar watched the tower window, listening for the rhythm of two heartbeats. One woman, one child. Oberyn's words were knives wrapped in silk. My sister Elia died beneath Lannister blades because the realm feared bastards born of prophecy. And now you ask us to embrace another babe of foreign bloodlines? Yet when he saw the determination carved into Rhaegar's features, his anger cooled. Very well, dragon. Win the realmsmen's hearts before their mouths fill with poison. Crown Elias' son Rhaenys as your trueborn heir, raise this wolf cub as prince of a new Dornorth pact, and perhaps the realm may follow. Rhaegar considered, troubled. Aegon bears the name of the promised prince. Names don't feed small folk. Oberyn cut. Stability does. At length Rhaegar bowed his head. We shall convene the council at Old Town, put the matter before lords of every region. Yet he knew councils moved slower than whispers. Crown politics, like wildfire, could explode at the slightest spark. Every step ahead seemed lined with unseen tinder. Within the tower, Lyanna's breathing grew shallow. Each pull a struggle against pain no healer's draft could dull. Ned sat vigil, humming an old northern lullaby, the same his mother once sang beside the hearth. Rhaegar dozed upright, cloak about his shoulders, until a muffled sob from the midwife shocked him awake. The woman knelt beside blood-soaked sheets, shaking her head. Ned felt his world tilt. She lapses between fever and chill, the woman whispered. Milk of the poppy eases her suffering, but I fear her strength wanes. Rhaegar cradled Lyanna's hand. Hold fast, my lady. I need your counsel as queen. Lyanna's eyelids fluttered. She seemed to see beyond him, towards some frozen lake beneath a snow-bright sky. When she spoke again, her voice was barely air. Tell Jon he can still be happy. Tell Benjen not to lose himself in the cold. Tell father I forgave. Breath rattled, words slipping away. Ned could bear no more. He turned, pacing the chamber's rim, fists clenched. In his chest, grief warred with fury at prophecy. At kings, at the price innocence paid for men's banners. Yet when he looked upon the newborn, now sleeping peacefully in Rhaegar's arms, resolve steeled anew. Whatever storms awaited, that fragile life must be shepherded. Before dawn's first ember, Lyanna Stark passed into the halls of her ancestors, her face smooth at last, as though dreams of winter roses guided her home. Rhaegar wept silently, tears streaking unshaven cheeks. Ned laid his sister's sword, the slender blade she called Winter's Kiss, upon her breast, then covered her with the direwolf-patterned cloak he had worn since the neck. In the stillness that followed, he and the prince stood across the bed like pillars of night and dawn, each mourning in his own silence. They buried her at sunrise in the shadow of the tower, stone cairn raised by Stark hand and Martell hammer. Rhaegar planted a single blue winter rose upon the mound, its petals trembling in the desert heat. Ned watched it, wilt almost instantly, yet its scent lingered, haunting. When the time came to depart, the infant rode before Rhaegar, in a padded cradle strapped to the saddle. Ned rode beside, though his thoughts remained behind where red sand met gray stone. The north would cry for vengeance when ravens carried word of Lyanna's death. Yet, prophecy or not, he must shepherd them toward fragile peace. Ice had taken no blood this day, but the blade felt heavier than ever at his hip. They set course first for Sunspear, where Princess Elia awaited uncertain tidings. Along sun-baked roads they met small folk who peered curiously at the silver-haired man cradling an infant, and the wolf-cloaked lord whose grief etched stark lines around his mouth. At night, campfires flickered against sandstone outcrops, casting wavering shadows like long-reaching fingers. Oberyn sparred with Arthur Dayne beneath starlight, blades ringing, their breath steaming in the chill desert night, while Ned recounted tales of iced weirwoods to soothe the restless babe. Sometimes Rhaegar joined the spar, moving with weary grace. Other times he secluded himself with parchment, composing an edict to dismantle the alchemist's guild to forbid wildfire casks within city walls. He replayed his father's last words, burned them all, and vowed no dragon henceforth would utter them. Yet plots already stirred like fish in muddy water. In the Reach, Lord Mace Tyrell considered marching roses to King's Landing, uncertain whether to laud or dethrone the new king who owed victory to Northern steel. In Riverrun, Hoster Tully mourned Robert and his own broken betrothals, wondering how many sons must bleed for honor. And in Dragonstone, Queen Rhaegar received secret word from Pycelle. Some Lannister captains whispered Jaime's act was kinslaying, not salvation, and meant to sail for the capital demanding redress. She summoned loyal captains to ready the royal fleet. Beyond narrow seas, Braavosi bankers smiled over ledgers. War bred debts, and debts bred iron promises. Captain Miles Toyne, the black-hearted second son, toasted rumors that 20,000 sellswords might find coin in Westeros before harvest's end. Across the vast Dothraki Sea, Khal Barbo heard tales of a dragon prince, whose armies bled one another, and grinned like a wolf scenting a wounded stag. A realm unsettled invited vultures from every distant sky. Upon reaching Sunspear, they found Elia Martell pale from long convalescence, yet standing upon the palace steps, children clutched close. Her dark eyes widened at sight of Rhaegar bearing another child. For a moment old wounds gaped between them, promises broken by prophecy, affection strained by distance and fear. Yet when the prince sank to one knee before her, presenting the babe with trembling hands, Elia drew a deep breath, gathered silks around her, and raised the child gently. "May the seven guard you, little one." She whispered, voice steady, "A brother to Rhaenys and Aegon, united beneath one heart." She looked to Rhaegar, pain and dignity mingling. "Will prophecy spare us all?" Rhaegar could only bow his head. "Not prophecy, but choice. Help me forge better choices." Elia led them into airy halls lined in mosaic suns. There, council convened. Oberyn, Doran, Ned, Arthur Dayne, Maester Caliot, and Rhaegar seated beneath a woven canopy of Dornish orange. They debated names and titles, lines of succession, alliances to mend, foes to placate. Ned sat mostly silent till Oberyn demanded, "Who fosters the boy?" Many eyes turned to the prince. Rhaegar's fingers tightened around the harp strings lying slack across his lap. At last, Ned spoke. "Send him north. Wolves guard their own. At Winterfell, few would dare steal into the heart of snow." Rhaegar looked pained. "To hide my son away." "To save him," Ned insisted. "And Lyanna's memory. The North will keep the secret until your realm is ready." Oberyn drummed fingers, thoughtful. "Dragon raised by wolves. Interesting. But will the realm not suspect, seeing a silver-haired babe at Winterfell's hearth?" "We dye his hair," Ned answered. "Copper like his cousins, until he is of age. Call him Jon, after my father's father, to honor old lines." Silence settled like dust. Then Elia nodded slowly. "Jon Snow, ward of Eddard Stark. A quiet name for now." She looked at Rhaegar. "Promise me he will know his mother's courage." Rhaegar rose, circled the table, and placed the infant in Ned's arms. The babe gurgled, small hand curling around a leather thong at Ned's shoulder. "Swear it," Ned said softly. "No more songs above lives." Rhaegar bowed his head and placed a hand atop the child's swaddled chest. "By the gods old and new, by every star beyond the wall, I swear." 3 nights later, beneath a moon sharp as a scythe, Ned Stark rode north with a small retinue. Howland Reed beside him, spear strapped across his back, and the infant Jon nestled in a cradle slung across the saddle. Behind trailed a silent company of 10 swords from House Dane, sworn to protect the secret with their lives. As they vanished into the rain-swept crossroads of the Reach, Rhaegar watched from a stony rise, cloak snapping. With each hoofbeat fading into darkness, a weight pressed heavier upon his heart. He was king yet newly childless in the eyes of the world. Rumor would soon insist his true-born heirs, Aegon and Rhaenys, alone carried the line, while whispers of a bastard born of winter would circle the taverns like moths round candle flame. Only trust and time would quiet those mutterings, if time allowed. Returning to King's Landing, Rhaegar found coronation preparations underway. Smiths reforged banners, septas scrubbed soot-blackened aisles of the Great Sept, masons chipped dragon statues reborn from ruin. But shadows lingered in every corridor. Lannister envoys demanding Jaime's absolution, or else a trial by combat. Tyrell envoys hinting at debts owed for neutrality. Baratheon loyalists, Stannis chief among them, who refused to bend knee, holding Storm's End behind thick walls. Rhaegar summoned his council in the small hall, shunning the cavernous throne room still stained by wildfire scorch. Connington sketched siege plans for Storm's End. Oberyn argued diplomacy. Varys suggested quiet knives to silence the growing lion's roar. Through it all, Rhaegar listened, weighing steel against mercy, memory against necessity. He ordered grain sent to Storm's End along the coasts, hoping to prove justice to the stubborn younger Baratheon. He dispatched ravens promising trials for any who had abused small folk in wartime. He pardoned minor rebels who surrendered before harvest-tide, but warned that future insurrections would meet firm response. The balance was precarious, too soft, and he invited contempt. Too harsh, and he reignited civil war. At twilight, Rhaegar climbed the steps of Baelor's Sept to pray at the altar of the crone for wisdom. There, an old woman in plain wool rose from kneeling to press a scrap of parchment into his hand before shuffling away. On it, in a spidery hand, the words, "The last dragon may yet be first to fall." Trust no whisper of green or gold. No seal marked the message. He turned to pursue but found only empty pews. Unease pooled in his gut. Green or gold, Wildfire and Lannister both bore those hues. Could King's Landing ever trust a dragon again? That night he walked the battlements, gaze flicking across the black waters of Blackwater Bay, where lanterns of fisher skiffs bobbed like fireflies. Far below, the city slept uneasy. He thought of Jon, cradled in a northern keep, of Lyanna's final breath scented with frozen roses, of Elias' wounded dignity, of Jaime Lannister's haunted eyes. He thought of prophecy and crown, of harp songs lost in the roar of steel. In the hush between moonset and dawn, he strummed the silver harp softly. Notes drifted skyward, fragile as hope. Somewhere in the wind a wolf howled, distant, but clear. The dragon listened, and for a fleeting heartbeat, the music of ice and fire found harmony. Not far from the Red Keep's shadow, two cloaked figures met in a lantern-lit wine cellar. One wore the crimson cloak of Lannisport faded beneath commoner's garb. The other, a maester's gray. They spoke in hushed tones of lion banners raised in secret, of Sel's-words landing at Crackclaw Point under cover of night, of wildfire caches quietly restocked near the tunnels below the Sept of Baelor. Gold flows like river water, the maester warned. Green flame waits only a spark. The lion nodded, slid a purse of silver across the dusty cask, and slipped into the night, footsteps echoing toward treason's uncertain dawn. High in the Tower of the Hand, Jaime Lannister dreamed of a throne forged of knives and of blood that would not wash from his hands, however furiously he scrubbed. He woke at dawn with sword drawn, breathing hard, convinced for a moment that King screamed anew. When daylight showed only shadows, he lowered the blade, unsure whether he was hero or kinslayer, savior or oathbreaker. Beyond the walls of King's Landing, ravens scattered toward every corner of Westeros, each carrying fragments of a realm still bleeding from the wound of civil war. Some letters heralded hope, others whispers of vengeance. In the months to come, new alliances would ignite, old grudges flare, and the fate of a kingdom would hinge on oaths made in silence. Yet for this one fragile morning, beneath a sun timid as spring's first bloom, the bells rang not for death, but for coronation. People gathered in the streets, unsure whether to cheer or kneel, yet drawn by curiosity to witness the Dragon Prince ascend. They saw a man clad not in rubies but in plain black velvet, a silver harp slung at his hip in place of sword. They heard him vow bread for the hungry, trial for the guilty, and rest for the weary. They heard him speak Aerys' name only once, to bid the city remember madness so that it might never rise again. Far away, in Winterfell's great hall, Catelyn Stark received her husband's raven. A simple note that spoke of tragedy and trust, of a child born under a shattered tower whom the gods had placed in their care. She wept for Lyanna she had never met, for Robert who would never feast in her halls, and for the fragile peace that balanced on her lord husband's solemn promise. When the snow began to fall outside, it fell soft and steady, as if the north itself mourned yet cradled new life in the hush of winter. And in the nursery of Sunspear, Princess Elia sang to Rhaenys and Aegon, her voice low and steady. The words told of dragons flying over deserts where stoneflowers bloomed after rain, of wolves who guarded secret gardens of ice. Each night she added another verse, weaving hope into the children's dreams. Oberyn listened from the doorway, daggers sheathed, anger banked, wondering if songs might yet outlast swords. The tale of Robert's rebellion ended at the Trident. But the story of Westeros stood upon a new threshold, forged in grief and fragile oaths. Somewhere beyond the narrow sea, a shadow in a mask of many faces heard word of a mad king slain and smiled, calculating fresh prices for death. On the wall, old men of the Night's Watch felt a chill deeper than wind, and whispered of omens in the aurora. In the crypts of Winterfell, stone kings held silent vigil as the realm above shifted like frost under sunlight, new cracks forming even as old ice melted. Above the Red Keep, a lone raven settled on the highest spike, feathers ruffling against rising thermals. It croaked once, an ambiguous note, before leaping into the brightening sky. Its wings beat eastward, bearing no scroll, only the weight of silent witness to a realm where dragon and wolf had bound their fates, and where the flames of prophecy still smoldered, waiting for the breath of destiny to kindle them anew. The shadow of the Red Keep sprawled long over King's Landing by the time the newly forged council dismissed its first fractious sitting, and still the rumble of the day's arguments lingered in Rhaegar's ears like the last echo of distant thunder. He walked the length of a gallery hung with faded tapestries, dragons sewn in threadbare gold, maidens crowned in summer roses, and paused before a high-arched window to breathe the sea-salt breeze that rolled off Blackwater Bay. City lights glittered below like a shaken handful of embers. Somewhere, faint but steady, the bells of Baelor's Sept tolled the hour of the maiden. Their chimes smothered the restless mutter that drifted up from taverns and tenements. In the hush between the bells, Rhaegar closed his eyes, pressing fore and middle fingers to the bridge of his nose. By day he spoke of amnesty and bread. By night, parchment petitions towered beside his inkstand like siege ladders. Every promise spawned 2 new debts. Every mercy, a rumor of weakness. Footfalls whispered over the rush mats. Ser Barristan Selmy emerged from a pool of torchlight, white cloak trailing. "Your Grace, the northern envoys you summoned wait in the small audience chamber." Rhaegar turned. 8 this hour. They arrived by river late this afternoon. They beg only a few moments. Beg or demand. Both, if I judge the ring of their voices. Barristan's weathered face softened. They are Stark men who marched south with Robert. They have questions and grievances. Of course they did. The North had stretched itself across half the realm on Robert's behalf, only to be told that the war's end carried neither victory nor vengeance. Rhaegar exhaled and motioned for Ser Barristan to lead the way. The small audience chamber sat a level below the great hall, paneled in cedar, darkened by candle smoke. 3 men rose as the king entered. Lord Wyman Manderley of White Harbor, broad as a cask in silver-trimmed teal, Galbart Glover, lean and scarred, and young Lord Jorah Mormont, sun-browned from exile in the Dornish foothills after long months of campaigning. Their cloaks dripped river mist. Manderley bowed so low that joints cracked. "Your Grace," his voice rolled like distant surf. "We come not in defiance, but confusion. Lord Eddard's raven spoke of peace, yet word reaches us of Robert's death, Lyanna's passing, and a babe no Northman has seen. The men who followed Robert cannot bury their dead in foreign soil, and pretend oath and blood mean nothing." Bah! Rhaegar gestured them to sit. He remained standing. "You marched for honor wronged. I do not ask you to feign contentment. but the realm stands one breath from ruin. I will not stoke grief into fresh war." Glover's hands clenched on the arms of his chair. Eddard Stark swore to bring Lyanna home. Instead she lies beneath southern sands, and he fosters a child of dragon seed. A sister for a bastard, a brother for a wolf? Yorah Mormont's green eyes narrowed in warning, but Glover pressed on. "If your grace means peace, let the north at least bear her home." Rhaegar inclined his head. When the snows rise and roads close, the ride would kill her a second time. "Come spring, I grant you my word. Lyanna Stark shall rest with her kin beneath Winterfell." Manderly's bearded chin dipped in grudging acceptance, but pain still glimmered in Glover's gaze. Rhaegar read the reproach there. Promises cost a prince little, yet each year winter promised death to men who could not afford delays. He added, "And until then I fund a crypt statue of Winterfell stone, carved by northern masons, to stand vigil in the Godswood where wolves remember." The tension in the chamber eased a shade. Jorah Mormont thanked him with a silent nod, though sorrow pinched his mouth. Manderly rose. "We shall bear your words north, yet the north is proud. Many will doubt. Your deeds must answer louder than ravens." "They will," Rhaegar said. "Ride safe." The crown provisioned fresh horses at the stables. As they departed, Sir Barristan lingered. "Every lord you appease awakens two who doubt, sire." "I know." Rhaegar's gaze drifted to a tapestry fraying above the hearth. A dragon, wings unfurled in crimson majesty. "But if I fail, the realm boils again." Across the city, in a lantern-lit alcove of the Rocking Horse brothel, Tyrion Lannister sampled Arbor Red and listened while a Braavosi spice trader whispered of Lannister galleys arming secretly at Lannisport. The dwarf's sharp eyes flicked over the rim of his cup. "My lord father invests heavily to secure peace, no doubt." The trader laughed, voice sibilant with accent. "Peace born on the prow of a warship, perhaps." Tyrion tipped the man 2 silver stags and dismissed him. Alone, he rotated the goblet between thumb and forefinger. Not 3 days passed, a raven from Casterly Rock had commanded his immediate return. Tywin Lannister disliked loose threads. Jaime Slayne of the King threatened to unravel every tapestry his father had spent decades weaving. Tyrion wiped wine from his lip and imagined Tywin forging new alliances from the bones of old as ruthlessly as any blacksmith quenched red-hot steel in oil. Whether those alliances crowned or dethroned Rhaegar mattered only insofar as the lion claws remained unsheathed. At dawn he would board a river galley bound to the Western Sea. For now, he toasted the uncertain sky. "To thrones," he murmured, "and to men who believe them solid." Storm's End crouched upon its promontory like a brooding giant. Walls fused of stone so dense siege engines left little more than powdery scars. Stannis Baratheon paced the thick ramparts, dark cloak snapping in the harsh salt wind. Beneath, waves smashed against the rocks with cannon-shot booms. Davos Seaworth shadowed him a pace behind, gloved hands folded, eyes following the new royal banners fluttering at distant siege lines. Crimson dragons alongside fox banners of Connington. Sun spears of Dorne, and flickering pale flints of House Flint. Yet no stags. Robert dead, Renly fled to Highgarden, and Stannis alone beneath the weighty crown of Storm's End that he had never sought yet never would yield. Rhaegar's terms had arrived on parchment smelling of rose oil. In them, the king offered titles and revenues, safe passage to court, even the restored Stormlands lordship. But between each polite line Stannis had read the subtext: bend the knee and bury your brother's dream, or stand alone against a realm tired of war. He stopped beside a crenel gap, staring seaward. "Honor bids I avenge Robert," he said without turning. "Prudence bids I keep my men alive." Davos leaned on the stone. "Prudence never sat your lordship easy. But vengeance does not feed soldiers' bellies. Winter portends lean larders." "Then Missawa." Stannis' jaw flexed. "Robert would spit on my caution." "Robert did many reckless things," Davos said carefully. "Chief among them charging a prince head-on and dying. You still have chance to shape this kingdom. If Rhaegar means half of what his letters promise, Your men could rebuild villages burned at Summerhall Crossing. Could sail again without fear of crown tariffs, strangling trade. Stannis glanced toward the siege lines. Camps neat, banners orderly, engines idle. Not one Stormlander civilian had been harassed. Connington even sent wagons of barley cakes as gesture. It stank of careful chivalry, a velvet gauntlet sheathing iron fist. Yet his garrison's grain dwindled. The gales off Shipbreaker Bay soured supplies faster than he could conserve them. "I will meet the king," he decided, voice low. "If terms dishonor Robert's memory, I'll break them on his skull." "And if not?" Davos asked. Stannis' eyes narrowed. "Then Robert's dream folds into mine, and mine into the realm's need." The raven-bearing Storm's End response glided into the Tower of the Hand during supper. Rhaegar slit its tube with a fruit knife, reading as candlelight pooled gold across the parchment. At last he smiled. Thin, but genuine. "Stannis agrees to parley beneath the walls 3 days hence." Across the table, Oberyn Martell lifted a goblet. "First steps tread slow, but each counts." Lord John Connington drummed fingers. "Parley invites plots. Lannister agents prowl those camps. And Aerys, loyalists." Damn. Rhaegar set the letter aside. "Then we host the parley within sight of both armies. Truth bears witness." He gestured to parchment. "Stannis demands trial by combat to test my reign's legitimacy. His champion against mine. If his falls, Storm's End swears fealty." Oberyn's grin flashed. "A bold old custom. Who will stand for the crown?" "Connington again." "Dane." "I will," Jaime Lannister said quietly from the hearth where he leaned. Arms folded. Heads turned. The young lion's face was drawn, but eyes resolute. "I slew the Mad King. Let me defend the realm from further bloodshed." "Oh, and now?" A tremor of unease passed. Connington spoke first. "Your honor lies under shadow. Some call you Kingslayer with bitterness. Victory may soothe that, or stoke it if misread." Rhaegar studied Jaime. "Would you wear the white of the Kingsguard anew?" "If you commanded, your grace." "Then you champion us, but swear this before the Seven. Your blade serves justice, not lions." Jaime bent the knee. "I swear by my hope of salvation." Oberyn chuckled. "The gods cherish irony. A Kingslayer to save a king." 3 days later, banners whipped beneath a sky full of roiling ash-gray clouds when Jaime Lannister rode into the cleared field before Storm's End. A ring of wagons marked the circle, guarded by equal numbers of Baratheon men and crowned troops. Stannis' champion emerged first. Sir Richard Horpe, a dour knight, famed for mace work. He wore black plate, chased with dull bronze, helm crowned by a spiked ring. Jaime dismounted, tossed his reins to a squire, and paced to the chalk line, golden armor gleaming like trapped sunlight. He drew his longsword, bright, balanced. As the crowd hushed, the fight began with clanging fury. Horpe advanced, mace describing vicious arcs that sent sparks flying where it clashed against Jaime's parries. Mud churned beneath their boots as the clouds burst, rain drumming helm and spalder. Jaime danced sideways, wrist flicking, turning each heavy blow aside. Horpe pressed, mace crashing against shoulder guard, denting gold. Jaime slid a half-step back and riposted. Steel bit flank mail, slicing open a seam. Blood welled dark, but Horpe seemed not to notice, red fury in his eyes. He roared and swung overhead. Jaime caught the haft under crossguard, twisted, and slammed a mailed fist into Horpe's visor. The knight staggered. Jaime's sword flashed, severing the mace chain. In the heartbeat of Horpe's surprise, Jaime thrust under the breastplate edge, straight into mid-ribs. Horpe gasped, knees buckling, rain mingling with blood. Jaime withdrew, stepped back as the knight collapsed. Silence followed, broken only by rain pattering on shields. Jaime saluted Stannis with blade raised, then turned toward Rhaegar seated beneath a striped pavilion. The king inclined his head once. Acknowledgement, gratitude. Stannis' face remained granite as he knelt beside his fallen man. Closing the knight's eyes, rising he strode to the chalk line, rain streaming from his beard. "Storm's End yields," he said, voice raw but steady. Yet remember this day your grace. Peace bought with courage finest coin. Spend it wisely. Rhaegar stepped from the pavilion, mud splashing his boots. He drew a short dagger, pressed the edge to his palm until blood beaded. By dragon blood and king's word, I pledge Storm's end prosperity equal to any seat, and honor Robert's name among my greatest foes. Stannis extended his own scarred hand. They clasped wrists, blood mingling with rain. Around them banners dipped, a sea of color swaying in the wind. Months passed, and with each turning of the moon the realm seemed to breathe easier. Merchants returned to river towns, mill wheels creaked anew along weedwater banks, and winter storms stayed their fury longer than farmers feared. Yet not all clouds parted. In Old Town's looming starry sept, the great council convened beneath stained glass windows depicting the Seven. Rhaegar sat upon a simple oaken dais, not the dragon throne. Flanked by Maester Aemon, called from the wall at great effort, and High Septon Benekar, whose cheeks still bore burn scars from secret wildfire caches destroyed during Rhaegar's purge. Lords great and small crowded pews. Tywin Lannister self-crowned in crimson silks, Olenna Tyrell ornate as a jeweled hawk, Hoster Tully stooped but shrewd. Lord Paxter Redwine smelling of spiced wine, Balon Greyjoy glowering like a storm cloud far from sea. Each bore grievances and desires, as weapons sharper than any sword. On the third day, as debate over succession crested, Tywin rose. The hall quieted beneath his lion's roar of presence. "My lords," he began, voice cold. "The line of kings must be clear or chaos consumes us. The Crown Prince Aegon, first of Elias Wome, remains heir apparent, but whispers abound of dragon seed nursed beneath wolf's shadow. Unacknowledged bastards breed unrest, especially those rumored of prophecy." Ears bent. Murmurs rippled. Rhaegar's throat tightened. Before he replied, the great oaken doors slammed. Eddard Stark strode in, gray rime on travel cloak, John Connington and Howland Reed at his shoulders. A gasp swept the pews. The North had ridden hard to answer insult. Ned halted before the dais, bowing curtly. "Your Grace, word reached Winterfell that my house's honor stands questioned. I come to answer, though I would rather bury my sister in peace." Tywin's gaze sharpened. No man questions the North's valor, only the realm's right to know who wears crowns now, and who may tomorrow. Ned faced the hall, voice ringing. Lyanna Stark bore no bastard. She wed Prince Rhaegar in private ceremony before witnesses, Sir Arthur Dayne and the High Septon Paulius, whose signed writ lies sealed in Old Town's vault. Their son lives, rightful issue. But winter's teeth gnaw at babes, so he is fostered north until grown. The prince will one day claim his place, but today he drinks mother's milk and knows nothing of crowns. A stunned hush. Then uproar. Lords shouting of bigamy, Dornish politic, broken betrothals. Rhaegar rose, one hand raised. The marriage followed annulment to Elia by lawful Septon authority when her health forbade further issue. Yet I have never disavowed her, nor our two beloved children. Rhaenys and Aegon remain honored princess and prince. The crown shall weigh each child's worth as they come of age. I will not pit sibling against sibling. The realm will choose by counsel when the hour arrives. Bender. High Septon Benekar stood, staff tapping stone. So let it be recorded. The children shall share precedence until the gods show their favor. He glanced at Tywin. House Lannister kept the Seven's laws when you wed your sister to a royal heir. Extend that courtesy now. A dangerous glitter flared in Tywin's eyes, but he dipped his head, contained. The realm hears and remembers. After adjournment, Rhaegar ushered Ned to a secluded cloister fragrant with lavender. "You risked much. Riding so soon." Ned shrugged. "Winter has long roads, but lies travel faster. Best to cut their legs before they grow." Rhaegar clasped his forearm. "Thank you." "How fares the boy?" "Sturdy as an oak sapling. Maester Luwin fusses, my lady wife frets, but he grows. 8 court, they call him John Wolfsguard now." Ned smiled faintly. "He'll be John who eats too much turnip if old Nan has her way." Rhaegar laughed, first genuine sound of mirth in weeks. But mirth yielded quickly to gravity. Tywin will not forget today's slight. I would bridge the rift, yet I fear his pride deeper than oceans. Then Tywin. Ned's eyes cooled. Pride may drown him. While lords quarreled over parchments, a raider longship named Seastrike slipped from Pike's Harbor under moonless skies. Sails dyed black as squid ink. Captain Carl the Maid commanded her bows. Granite features fixed on the horizon where trading ships threaded toward Old Town. The Iron Islands had kept quiet during southern wars. But Balon Greyjoy now sniffed the winds of chaos. A backdrop of dragon politics made perfect cover to Reeve. Seastrike cut through foam like a fin-back shark, bearing Ironborn hungry for salt wives and gold. The first galleass she took spilled rich arbor wine into the sea, and sailors' blood across sun-bleached decks. Word would reach Old Town late. By then Carl hoped to strike farther south, perhaps as far as the Stepstones, if nights remained cloud-shrouded. Elsewhere, shadows lengthened. On Dragonstone's wind-blasted cliffs, Queen Rhaella sat vigil beside a brazier, handmaids dozing on couches. She clutched a letter from her son and listened to the sea hammer basalt below. Each wave seemed to cry of fate. Children set apart, realms stitched by threadbare hope, prophecy unresolved. A chill breeze lifted silver hair from her shoulders. She closed her eyes and prayed that Rhaegar's line might endure where Aerys' madness failed. In Braavos, the Sea Lord received envoys from Westeros seeking loans to repair war-torn harbors. He laughed behind scented candles. Gold bled from crowns like ichor from wounds. Soon the Iron Bank would call debts and choose winners in the Game of Thrones as it always did, with coin as sword. But none of those distant intrigues intruded on a lantern-lit chamber far below the citadel, where Maester Aemon sat with Samwell Tarly, newly arrived from the Wall with scrolls of ancient provenance. They pored over brittle manuscripts, speaking of princes born beneath falling stars, of dragons made flesh from the union of ice and fire. Aemon's clouded eyes brimmed tears as he traced a fated line. "Many years have I waited," he whispered. "Could prophecy mean young Jon as well? We must send word carefully. Too many seek to twist omens for crowns." Sam shifted uneasily. "Messengers might be intercepted. Then we send ravens in cipher. The truth must not rot on these shelves." Spring melted into summer. Grain swayed across the crownlands, bees hummed in orange groves of Dorne, and the stark words "winter is coming" slipped from everyday lips. Yet along the Wall, the nights deepened. Rattleshirt reported campfires in the Frostfangs, where no clans dared burn in living memory. Wildling scouts found graves disturbed. Corpses vanished. In Eastwatch, a white wolf was sighted pacing the frozen strand, eyes blue as glacial pools, heedless of arrow flights. Lord Commander Corgyle dispatched ravens south. Signs of shadows in the snow. Glimpses of pale figures at dusk. Most lords ignored the ramblings of a watch grown thin. War skeins below the neck eclipsed distant threats. In Winterfell, Ned read the scroll grimly and forwarded it to Rhaegar with a terse note. "The North remembers more than banners." Rhaegar received that raven at dusk while touring crack-framed walls of Harrenhal, where he intended to rebuild a courtly seat symbolizing unity. The castle's melted towers still whispered of dragonfire. He considered them caution and ambition both. Ned's message chilled him. He summoned Grand Maester Pycelle, now wary but dutiful. "Make study of records before Aegon's conquest. I recall tales of creatures in the cold. We win hearts in the south, but if doom rises north, hearts will avail us little." Pycelle bowed low, jowls quivering. "Of course, Your Grace." His eyes flicked sideways. "Yet funds for libraries thin since war. Might I petition a stipend?" Rhaegar waved assent, though he mistrusted Pycelle's avarice. Later, he met privately with Lord Brynden Tully, newly appointed Warden of the Riverlands, requesting seasoned scouts to bolster the Night's Watch. Bryndon's one good eye twinkled. "I'll send my best. But ravens carry gossip. Make sure your court heeds mine louder than Lannister slander." Autumn's first chill settled over King's Landing when Tywin Lannister at last arrived with 400 men in Lion livery. Gold and crimson streamed down the city's great road like molten sunset. The small folk gaped from galleries at the spectacle. Rhaegar greeted Tywin in the throne room, now aired, cleaned, but still absent the Iron Throne, which he had moved behind curtains for repairs. Instead, he addressed the lion from a plain dais draped in smoky gray. Tywin bowed, sharp gaze assessing every crack in the marble. "Your palace bears many scars," Tywin observed. "May they remind us war's cost." "Scars teach humility," Rhaegar agreed. "Yet, they also mark resilience." Tywin's mouth curled. House Lannister knows both. They spoke politely of road repairs, trade tithes, and tourneys to celebrate harvest. Then Tywin named his price for alliance. Lordship over Harrenhal, seat of ancient grandeur, symbol of new order. Rhaegar countered with lordship of Castamere and gold mines, seized from traitorous reigns. Tywin sniffed at lesser spoils. Negotiations stretched over days, while Varys slithered between factions, bearing whispers. Jaime, torn between loyalty to father and oath to king, watched from shadows, knuckles white on sword belt. In quiet moments he walked the courtyard, where he had once sparred with Sir Arthur Dayne, and found ghosts in every corner. One night, as the bells marked the 7th hour, a squire found Jaime beneath the rookery stairs, mail shirt half unbuckled, eyes unfocused on the spangled sky. "Sir?" the boy ventured. Jaime blinked, shook free of memory. "Ready my horse. I ride tonight." He sought Rhaegar's chambers, found the king reading by lamplight. "I cannot be pawn in my father's game," Jaime said. "Grant me commission to tour the Riverlands and ensure peace. Let me earn my cloak." Rhaegar regarded him with somber kindness. "Go then. Carry messages of my intent. Stop at Riverrun first. Brynden will offer counsel." He handed Jaime a sealed letter. For Lord Tywin, bidding him trust his son's honor. Jaime accepted, relief shading his handsome features. Dawn saw him gallop through the Lion Gate, cloak streaming silver white, a knight seeking redemption across a realm still raw with wounds. On the 12th night of Tywin's stay, a banquet spread across the Queen's ballroom. Capon stuffed with lemons, honey-glazed quail, trout baked in almond milk, flagons of Dornish red. Minstrels played lilting airs while lords traded courteous barbs. Rhaegar seated Lady Olenna between Tywin and Hoster Tully, wagering her thorn-sharp wit might puncture their posturing. The old rose cackled, needling each until even Tywin smirked. But beneath laughter currents swirled. Varys drifted behind columns, noting glares, tallying alliances. Oberyn Martell flirted with Tywin's niece, while his brother Doran quietly discussed shipping rights with Paxter Redwine. Near the dais, Balon Greyjoy nursed ale and watched the lot with storm-dark eyes, each chuckle tightening his jaw. When the harpist struck up the drowning of Fair Isle, Balon's patience broke. He slammed his mug down, calling over the musicians. "Play a song of salt and iron, not mainland mockery." Silence rippled. Rhaegar inclined his head. "Choose a tune, Lord Greyjoy. The hall entertains all voices." Balon rose, broad shoulders stiff, and sang in harsh tenor, a sea shanty of krakens pulling gilded galleys under black waves. Some courtiers shifted, unsettled. Others clapped politely. Tywin sipped wine, mask inscrutable. When the song ended, Balon bowed stiffly and stalked from the hall. Rhaegar watched him go, mind spinning. A restless kraken sought storms. He would need to treat with the Iron Islands soon, or they would treat with him by reaving. East of Qarth, beyond the Bones Mountains, 3 warlocks huddled around a smoking brazier. Visions had shown one ruby dragon falling beside a blue winter rose, another gold-clad lion slaying fire, a silver prince crowning children with salt. They read these signs as portents of power shifting west. The eldest warlock, lips stained indigo, smiled thinly. Magic stirs. Dragons may yet hatch from stone given blood enough. They set their sights upon the shattered empire of Valyria, where smoking hellscapes lingered, believing secrets of rebirth slumbered under ash. And they nodded to each other, for where dragons rose, warlocks might feast. That winter came early. Frost-rimed leaves in the reach, while vineyards drooped heavy with grapes unharvested. In White Harbor, seals hauled onto ice floes, by mid-moon of Braavosi calendar. Such gelid sheathing had not occurred within living memory. Maesters wrote of red comets glimpsed before dawn, of ravens refusing northern flight. At the wall, Lord Commander Corgyle stood atop the icy rampart, breath-pluming, and watched the forest below pulse with eerie blue flickers that died whenever torches drew near. He turned to his officers. "Double the patrols, keep fires high, and if gods are kind, send south for grain. We winter early." At Winterfell, Ned Stark woke before dawn to find snow dusting the godswood. Jon Snow, swaddled in wool, gurgled as Ned carried him along the pool's edge. The heart tree's red leaves shivered, casting scarlet droplets upon snow. Ned knelt, pressing a hand to the ancient bark. "Watch over him," he whispered. Somewhere deep within, the old gods listened with hollow wooden faces. Far south, Rhaegar dreamed again of the Trident's cold waters washing rubies from his breastplate. In the dream he knelt beside Robert's corpse. Yet when he looked, the face was his own, violet eyes dull. Then the river froze around him, ice-forming chains that bound wrists and ankles. On the shore, a shadow of flame beckoned. A stag crowned with fire, antlers melting snow. Above, a comet burned red across a blackened sky. He woke sweating. Elia stirred, murmuring gull-wing words in her mother tongue. Rhaegar slipped from bed, draped a cloak, and paced to the balcony. King's Landing lay hushed under star-pricked firmament, but beyond the streets he saw a glimmer, green, not gold, flickering near the ruins of the dragon pit. He summoned guards and rode with a handful of white cloaks. They found a warehouse engulfed in emerald inferno. Barrels marked with the alchemist's sigil exploded one by one, spraying molten glass into the sky. Rhaegar's heart lurched. He had ordered every cache destroyed months ago. As dawn painted smoke, plum, and violet, charred remains of hooded figures were dragged from the wreckage. No sigils, no parchment. A single coin lay fused in one corpse palm, a golden lion upon crimson. Rhaegar stared at the melted effigy. Lions in flame. Dreams and warnings. He clenched the coin until it burned his skin. On the road to Riverrun, Jaime Lannister rode alone at dusk, armor scuffed and cloak bespeckled with mud. Behind him lay hamlets where he had soothed fears with coin and boasts. Ahead a river low from drought. He camped by its bank, staked his horse, and ate a heel of bread. Stars emerged, quiet and indifferent. As he dozed against a tree, he thought of promises to a dead king and to a living prince, of Tywin's cold ambitions and Cersei's warmer ones, of a boy named Bran he had once threatened in his mind to silence secrets, of a realm that weighed names heavier than deeds. Somewhere in the dark an owl hooted. Jaime opened his eyes to find a cloaked woman standing across the dying fire, moonlight silvering the cheeks beneath shadow. Her voice carried an accent old as hills. "The lion walks a knife edge. Which way will he fall?" Jaime's hand went to sword. "Who are you?" "Only a guide." She tossed a small bundle onto the coals. It burst with fragrant smoke. "One path leads to pride and ruin, another to redemption paid with pain. Save the cub of ice and fire, and roar will shift into song." When the smoke cleared, she was gone. Jaime blinked, half believing a dream. But at his feet lay a feather, pale blue, tipped with frost. In the Red Keep's library, Rhaegar convened trusted minds. Maester Aemon, Howland Reed, Oberyn Martell, Stannis Baratheon, and Sir Barristan. He showed them the coin and described the fire. Someone hoards wildfires still, and frames lions or uses them as mask. Stannis' jaw clenched. Lannister gold buys many masks. Coin may be real enough. Oberyn flicked the coin. Yet who burned their own stockpile if they meant to wield it? Aemon's milky gaze seemed to pierce parchment and stone. In the darkest tales, the enemy you see hides the foe you miss. Rhaegar placed his palm on the map of Westeros. Troubles brew on every shore. The North senses death on cold winds, the Ironborn stir. Lannister's scheme. "We must strengthen ties, marriages, alliances." Oberyn raised an eyebrow. "You propose matches?" "My niece Arianne is of age. A Stark boy may suit." Howland Reed smiled wryly. My liege, swamp sons seldom make good princes. Stannis crossed arms. The Stormlands rebuild. A Tyrell bride sealed my brother's alliances once. Perhaps a Baratheon bride might seal Lannister peace. Bow. Rhaegar considered. Gendry waters may yet prove Robert's last legacy. If raised legitimated. Oberyn whistled. The small folk would love a Smith King's son, nobles less so. Debate rolled like surf against cliffs. Rhaegar listened, weighing each. Winter's first true storm lashed White Harbor while Ned received a raven sealed in black wax. A summons to King's Landing for a council on northern defense. He turned to Catelyn, silent at the hearth rocking baby John. Her eyes shone worry. Travel in such weather? I must, Ned said. If I ignore, the North's voice weakens. And if threats rise beyond the wall, supplies must flow before passes close. She nodded, stroking John's silver-touched hair. The child has your quiet courage. Bring him word that his homeland readies welcome. Ned kissed her brow. And bring you word of peace. Balon Greyjoy's patience snapped with the first harvest moon. He convened his captains under the seastone chair, carving knives into driftwood maps. The wolves play with dragons. The lions burn in their own den. The kraken shall rise while they squabble. He announced his intent to claim the Riverlands coast, beginning with Fairmarket and Maidenpool. His daughter Asha argued caution. His brother Euron grinned wide, promising sails of black wind. Ravens flew to King's Landing bearing warnings from coastal lords. But news arrived the same morning of a Tyrell, Lannister trade pact, sealed in bronze ink on vellum. Tywin had gained rights to dredge the Mander mouth for gold-laden silt. In exchange he pledged ships to protect Reach coasts. Rhaegar recognized maneuver. Tywin secured fleets against Ironborn while earning Tyrell coin, isolating the crown. He summoned Lord Paxter Redwyne out. I need your fleet under royal banner. Paxter stroked perfumed beard. Give me sole import rights to Qohor silk. Done. Politics proved coin and concession. Short-term bandages over deep wounds. Night fell across the wall with Aurora dancing like green serpents. In the woods a horn sounded, 3 blasts. The ancient call for others. Ranger Arlen hurried along frost-clad pines, but found only stillness. He stood trembling, bow drawn. Something shifted beyond the tree line. A flicker of pale limbs, eyes glowing unnatural blue. The wind ceased. Snowflakes hung motionless. When sound returned, Arlen saw the prince, bare feet, toes long and clawed, walking from shadow into deeper dark, and bodies of 2 rangers propped against a stump, faces white as bone, eyes open and unseeing. He fled, horn wailing. At Castle Black, the gate slammed shut as dawn pinked the sky. Arlen dropped to his knees at Corgilly's boots. They wake, he sobbed. The dead walk. Corgilly's broad face paled. He turned to Maester Harmune. Send Raven. Winter truly comes. Ravens beat southward with desperate wings. By the time they reached King's Landing, Rhaegar was dispatching fleets to face Greyjoy reavers. Ned Stark was snowbound near the neck, and Tywin Lannister was sealing marriage between Cersei and Willas Tyrell to bind Reach and Rock. The raven brought by Night's Watch arrived at dawn. Feathers rhymed. Rhaegar read, felt the rune spin. He strode to the hearth, cast another log, watched sparks spiral. War on 2 fronts, north and sea, while the realms seems frayed. Maester Aemon's words echoed. Prophecy is dagger without hilt. Yet Rhaegar gripped the blade anyway, feeling its bite. He ordered messengers. Stannis to rally Stormland levies north, Connington to muster Crownland spears, Manderley to ready harbor fleets. A letter for Ned bore a single line: ride if roads allow. If not, prepare Winterfell for war beyond men. And then Rhaegar sought his harp, fingers trembling on silver strings, and sang softly of summer meadows lost beneath snow, until tears blurred his sight. Elia found him thus, voice ragged in lullaby. She folded him into her arms. The realm needs hope, she whispered. He pressed his brow to hers. Hope or fire. We must wield one before the darkness wields both. Outside, dawn's first pale light crept across rooftops, painting frost tips gold. It touched the melted scar on Rhaegar's palm where wildfire coin had bitten, glinting like prophecy's brand. And far to the north, beyond watchfires dying in cold wind, blue eyes opened in a drifting snowbank, reflecting that same pale dawn. Hungry, patient, inevitable.